I am live. Hi, welcome to 4 o'clock Sunday Stories with me, Ernie Boxall. You may hear some cricket on the television, but I've come out for a bit of an afternoon out, so I'll take that. 4 o'clock Sunday Stories, and I want to talk about two entrepreneurs, and they're the people who manage, own, run Tudor World Shreve House in Stratford, Janet and John. And it's quite a story. I don't know how they started, no idea, but about 3.5 years ago, I was advised, or I was given the opportunity to go along and to become a ghost guide people around a house built in 1480, a house that was full of stories from Tudor times right up and really until the present day. And I met Janet and John, and Brother John, we'll say, who unfortunately is no longer with us. And they gave me an opportunity to develop my talents as a storyteller, but also as a communicator with people who have paid money to come along to be entertained and educated. Now, I've talked a lot about Tudor World. As I say, a house in Stratford-upon-Avon that was built in 1480, and a part of the front part of the house is concerned has changed very little since. And they've turned it into a Tudor museum in the daytime. So families can take their children into the house, into the museum, and take up little questionnaires, little quizzes. And as they are guided, I say guided, there's no one with them, but they only go one way, around the house, they can learn an awful lot about Tudor history. And I often tell people that when I was at school, I think the Tudor history contained or took up around about 6 pages of my history book. I knew very, very little about Henry VIII, about Queen Elizabeth I. But having worked in the house now, it's a fascinating period. A period where Catholicism was a religion that was frowned upon, let's say, for a lot of that period. A period dominated probably by Henry VIII and the story of his wives, and then Queen Elizabeth I. You walk through or into a gift shop and you pass the mannequin of William Shreve, a man who was bequeathed the house by Henry VIII. Go into a little mazy corridor where we talk about the beginnings of the actual lot itself, the location, right back to 1190 and even before that. And then we're introduced to a Tudor dinner, a table laden with the sort of food that I would say well-off Tudors would have eaten in that time. Maybe let's bring this down. And then we go from there, into a room where we have dresses and uniforms that the kids can use to see what it was like to dress up as a Tudor child. There are facts and information about Shakespeare himself and quotes from his plays that people try to identify. There's also a four-poster bed, which carries quite a fascinating story. But you'll have to come into Tudor World to find out what that story is. Then we go into what we perhaps call the throne room, and it's a queen or a king's throne. Stories of Henry VIII, of Queen Elizabeth I, sit on the throne, have your photo taken with the crown on, marvel at the Queen Elizabeth's dress and Henry VIII's garb, before we go upstairs into the ship room. And I did say the ship room. The story is that floorboards that were brought to towns like Stratford to strengthen the buildings came from ships that sailed against the Spanish Armada. So the theme of that room is around the sea, through into a room that I call the schoolroom, but it's a room where we talk about Dr. John Dee, a professor who was part of Lord Walsingham's spy ring, and witches, Mother Shipton. And there's a small cubicle where you can sit and listen to the stories of Stratford from the ages of Mother Shipton herself. And you can also find out whether or not your mother is a witch. Sit at a table and actually write with a quill pen and ink. Fascinating story about a whipping boy that tells you the origin of the story. From there, we go into what is the marketplace with the stocks there. Fascinating story about what the stocks were used for and how the local people used them for entertainment. Pigs, fruit, vegetables, all the things you'd associate with the market. Into the room that contains mannequins, I would say, from the time when Tudor House was in fact the Three Tons Tavern, and also a hospital. We have a mannequin of William Rogers, who was a tavern owner, a tavern master at the Three Tons, and also mentioned in one of Shakespeare's plays. There's also a barber. The story is that the house was used in the First English Civil War as a hospital, mainly for parliamentarian officers and troops. We go through into the plague room. A patient dying on the bed with the doctor standing above him, and the stories of the plagues of Stratford. Onto the stairs. Now, the stairs are a fascinating tale because they're not the original stairs. Apparently, the local council deemed them unfit for human beings to climb. And so, fortunately, a local lady donated to Shreve House to renew the stairs. Down at the bottom of the stairs, which many people miss, is a dungeon which shows a skeleton in a cage. You've seen them where a man is set within a cage that's hanging above the earth and presumably stays there until he dies and until his body becomes a skeleton. But there's also there a mannequin of John Jeffries. Another resident of the house, a Catholic who fell foul of Queen Elizabeth I. We then go into the down the stairs, bottom of the stairs, through a corridor and back into the gift shop, where we once again come face to face with William Shreve, and into the gift shop where we have all kinds of gifts and presents that can be bought as a memento of your visit to Shreve House. That's in the daytime. At the night time, people are taken around the same house, the same rooms, but it's in the dark. And we do tell the stories of the history of Shreve House, excuse me, and all the people who have died there. And there have been a lot. Now, people have asked me if I've ever seen a ghost, and the answer is no. I haven't seen a ghost. But things have happened there that have made me believe that more things happen in that house than people are led to understand. Music comes on when it's not supposed to. People have talked of being touched on the shoulder, coats being tucked when no one's there, rings being turned on fingers, strange and eerie feelings of coldness in a room where one of the residents or one of the characters in the house died. So it's the same house, the same rooms, but completely different tales. And that's the fascination. See, the house does not receive, as far as I know, any backing from councils or from charities. Everything is generated by Janet and John and a skeleton staff, 3 to 4 to 5 of us, who change roles or change shifts with each other so that we don't get overtired or we don't burn ourselves out with doing the same thing day after day after day. And, Janet and John have battled to keep this house going, to keep the history of Tudor world going. And they've battled against many, many problems that have been put on the way. Can you imagine what it takes to keep up a house that was built in 1480, to qualify for all the safety procedures that are now called for, to keep the house safe for visiting children and for visiting adults, to keep the story going and to keep it fresh, to come up with new aspects, new ideas, fresh themes, to keep the house going, to keep the story fresh. And they do it all from the proceeds of the people that come into the house. And they do it in a variety of ways. They do it through daily entry into the museum and through the ghost tours at night. They have a walk around Stratford on a Saturday afternoon where an actual Will Shakespeare tells you the story of Shakespeare's life. They run seances and ghost investigations, and they keep Tudor world going through the pandemic. And it's a phenomenal experience or a phenomenal adventure to keep that house going. And so often people that come in talk about being so thankful that something as historic that our house survives. But there's only one reason it survives, and that's because of Janet and John, and because of the small staff who've dedicated their lives, our lives, to keeping it going. So if you are ever in Stratford on Avon, if you're ever in Sheep Street, if you ever see Tudor World, don't walk by. Walk up and down the cobbled sidewalk at the side of the house, but don't walk up and down. Come in and experience some Tudor history. And if you are so inclined, come in at night and learn about those ghosts, those stories that inherited or inhabited the past around Stratford-upon-Avon. I'd love to see you there. That's my week. Have a great day. Have a great week. See you next time. Take care.